You know, many people consider the Mellotron to be the first sampler, but was it? Was there something before the Mellotron? Let's take a deeper look at these instruments and where they have ended up today. Hello Internet, Chris Cline here with Alma Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. And today we're going to talk about the Mellotron and the Chamberlin, and we're going to discuss the technology and you know what has gone into this box. But before we do that, we do want to ask you to subscribe to our channel. You can do that down below by just pressing the subscribe button. You can also visit us online at alamamusic.com, where we are a full instrument retailer. So now that I've done that, let's talk about the Mellotron and the Chamberlin and what this technology actually is and where it came from. Now, you know, many people, like I said in the opening, consider the Mellotron to be the first sampler. It's really the first playable sampler, or honestly, the Chamberlin was. And the Chamberlin worked much like a Mellotron, where with the Mellotron you have 35 keys on a Mark 400. And what happens with this instrument is when you press a key on the keyboard, a pinch roller is engaged and it grabs the tape and it pulls the tape across the tape head and it plays whatever timbre you have in your rack of tapes. It could be 3 violins, it could be a women's choir, boys choir, 16 violins, flute, bassoon, bass flute. It might be some sort of accompaniment track, which were really popular with the Mellotron Mark II, which was actually 2 manuals or 2 35 key keyboards in 1 unit. So it used analog tape technology to play back pitches with different timbres or different instruments. Now, here's the rub, and I've actually recorded real Mellotrons. I've recorded a couple of Mark IIs and a couple of 400s, as well as the Digitaltrons. And whenever I walk into a session, I get to record a real Mellotron. It's always so much fun, and I have been so fortunate that I've been able to do that. But with it being an analog device, it's going to be susceptible to certain things that exist in our universe. Number one, humans. We're playing the keyboards, right? If we press down a little too hard, it could cause the tape to move through the mechanism a little more slowly, which is going to result in it playing back flat, right? Because it is tape, it's not a tape loop. The way it works, the tape gets pulled through, gets dumped into a bin, and then the tape is going to end at anywhere from like 8 to 10 seconds. I think it's around 8 seconds. Once it's been pulled through, it's done. So the way you can re-engage that note is let the keyboard go, or let the key on the keyboard go, and there's a spring on the back of the tape that pulls it back down to its original position in the rack. This is very, very cool technology, but it can be a little limiting in that you can't hold down long pads or long chords. Now, 8 seconds is probably going to be long enough to hold anything down. And if you need to, you can always let up and play it again, because when the tape gets pulled back down, it gets pulled down really, really fast. Other limitations, it's going to be susceptible to voltage, right? There can be voltage issues. So if the voltage is too hot or too low, or if it's the wrong voltage altogether, you go to a different country and you don't have the right types of transformers, well, it's going to pitch the machine either up or down. The tapes can break, or they are going to degrade over time. I was working on an album in 1998 with the band in Austin, Texas at Stardog Studio called Deadwood Forest. This was in my infancy as a recording engineer. I was about a year in, and I was making more bad records than good records, but we were doing a prog album. We wanted to do it right. So we had a proper Mark 400 in there, and we had a couple of tapes break on us during the recording process. So you had to take out the entire tape chassis, the tape cartridge, however you want to refer to it, and then you need to go through a reel tape and find the pitch that you need, cut it out, and then put it back into the cartridge or into the rack. It takes a lot of time. So there are various issues you need to contend with when dealing with an analog or a real Mellotron or a Chamberlin, if you can find a real Chamberlin. Those are significantly more rare than Mellotrons. Now with the Digitaltron that we're going to look at today, we don't have really any of those issues. I have the rack version because I don't need any more keyboards. There are 2 different keyboard versions, the 4000 and the 4000 Mini. Both employ FITAR keyboards, and then there's actually a micro version, which is really, really small. I believe it's only 2 octaves, super thin. It's really, really sexy. But the thing that differentiates that machine from these machines is I have an expansion slot here, and the 4000 and the 4000 Mini both have the expansion slots where the micro does not. So I can get additional sounds for this box, as well as for the 2 bigger keyboard versions. All of these machines are built really, really well. You have these graphical displays in the front that show you what type of instrument you're looking at, how the instruments are blended, and I can blend the instruments using this right here. And while I'm mentioning that, we've got 2 different instruments that we can blend, and truly blend. On a Mark 400, you can blend up to 3 sounds. Now, you've got 3 tracks of tape, so you can only blend 2 of the sounds at a time. So the 2 sounds that are on the leading edges of the tape, you can't blend those 2, they have to be together, which is a great feature. But here I can blend these, I can pitch things up and down, I can change the octave or the register, which is nice. I can also change the tone, so I can make it a little bit brighter or a little bit darker. Has a headphone output on front. It's beautifully illuminated. On the back, all the connections for our outputs are gold. We've got separate connections for instrument 1 and 2, or A and B. And then there is a connection or an output that blends both of those, a mix. These are 1/4-inch connections in the back, as well as balanced XLR outputs. And then, of course, you have your MIDI in, out, and through, which are standard 5-pin DIN. There is no MIDI over USB on this, and I'm fine with that. I have so much legacy. I feel weird saying that because most great machines still have your in, out, and through. But I say I have so many MIDI products with in, out, and through, and I've got a MIDI patch bay as well that has 8 ins and 8 outs and yada yada yada. So it's easy for me to interface this with my current studio. But it's a great box, and I have said a lot already. So let's take a listen to it. And you're going to hear some familiar sounds if you're into prog rock, like, yes, King Crimson, or even the Beatles, for instance, in Strawberry Fields. Lots of bands have employed the Mellotron throughout the years, not just the prog people, but Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. And as I said in a previous video, Kraftwerk, New Order, Radiohead. It's a very, very popular instrument, Oasis. And I'm still talking. Let's take a listen to it. So here we are with the Mellotron, the 4000D, and this is the rack version. The reason I have the rack once again is because I have enough keyboards and I don't need to have any more keyboards in my collection. But for those of you that are interested, there are 3 different versions with the keyboards attached, excuse me. There is a standard size, there is a mini size, and there's a micro. The micro doesn't allow for the expansion card. This right here, I thought about the micro, and I thought about, well, if I get the rack version and I have the expansion slot, well, then I have the option to increase my sounds by an additional, I believe it's 400 sounds or 400 patches, if you will, or 400 instruments. Each card has 100 new sounds on it. Card number 1 is built into all the machines that Mellotron Stockholm has to offer. Again, everything on here is sourced from the original tapes at 24 bits, and I think at 48K, if I'm not mistaken, 48 kilohertz sampling rate. So it sounds fantastic. Just to get an idea, well, there's the flute patch that we all know so well. And as you can see here with these screens, it's easy for us to scroll through sounds. We have 2 individual select knobs, for each machine, or let me put this into different terms, for each 1/8 inch of the tape. So with an original Mellotron, you have a 3/8 of an inch tape for every single key, and across that tape are 3 different sounds. Right now, we can't blend all 3 sounds because the 2 sounds on the leading edge, well, the head's not going to touch both of those at the same time. So we can, on here, we can blend to the sounds just like we could on a proper tape-driven Mellotron. And the way that we can blend the sounds is by manipulating the A-B mix. Now, you see here I have the flute and I have the piano. And I can blend between them with great ease. Now I can also change the tone so it gets a little darker. I can also change the pitch. And another key element to this is how long the note will play. And just like on a real Mellotron, it's going to sustain for about 8 seconds. At which point it just turns off. And on a real Mellotron, all you have to do is release the key, and the tape that's been collected in the tape bin is going to be pulled back by the spring that exists on the tape rack, cartridge, whatever you want to call it, and then you can play the note again. So I think it's nice that that Marcus in Stockholm paid that much attention to the experience that one is going to get when playing a Mellotron. And he kept it as faithful as possible. Even though we're in the digital domain, you only have so long to hold down these notes. And then it eventually is going to run out. And I greatly appreciate that. So this, of course, is the flute from the Mark II. I know this is a Mark II flute because I know the sound for one, but this is a Mark II that's being displayed on this side of my instrument selection. I know it's Mark II because it has 2 manual keyboards. Now, to select different sounds, all I do is turn the Bakelite knob . And we can still blend between the 2 sounds. There's the 3 violins. Very popular patch. Heard that on all kinds of recordings from King Crimson to the Moody Blues. And it all exists in here. Three violins on a Mark 400, 16 violins. And notice how when I first press the key on this G, it's a little pitchy at the very beginning. So cool. It's little things like that that it's all included in here. And you don't have to worry about voltages or tapes breaking or any of the other things that come along with having a real Mellotron. Again, having a real Mellotron in your arsenal is totally cool. Oh my God, they're so beautiful and so much fun. But having one that is not going to break on you is a little cooler to me. And I know people are going to just revolt from me saying that. But this option is it's always going to work unless the power supply blows up or you get struck by lightning, and in which case, well, if you get struck by lightning, you're probably going to die. But if your home or your studio gets struck by lightning, then there's a good chance that everything's going to go out. The point I'm making is that this is more reliable than the real deal. And again, the real deal is cachet out the wazoo, super cool, but it's just nice having something that's always going to play back for you and play back properly. The back of the machine also has multiple multiple outputs, and everything is gold plated, all the connectors. There's even XLR outputs as well for individual A and B machines, as well as for the total mix. So Marcus did this properly in the digital format, and I'm so glad that he did. I've had various plugins, and they kind of fit the same mold. I'm just personally tired of working in the box like that with virtual instruments. And I know people are going to say, well, that's a virtual instrument. Sure, why not? But it's tactile for me in that it feels like I'm manipulating an old school Mellotron. So if you want to know more about this, go to the Mellotron site online, and I think it's literally mellotron.com. I could be mistaken. You can always use a Google machine to figure it out. I know that all of you out there are incredibly educated and you know how to work these mechanisms. So we're going to go ahead and stop here today, and I hope that you have a better understanding of what the Mellotron is and what it does and how it sounds. There's 100 different instruments on here. We're not going to go through all of them, obviously, but again, just seek it out, and you can get more information online about these wonderful instruments from Stockholm. All right, so I hope you have a better understanding of what a Mellotron is, what it sounds like, what it's going to do. This instrument's not for everybody, but I know a lot of musicians that I work with love these tones, these timbres, these patches that now exist in here, and having this over the real deal, I think it's such a great option, especially if you're a touring musician, because if you're out touring, real Mellotrons are going to do all kinds of crazy things on stage. And if a tape breaks, power goes out, whatever, now you're out the instrument. In this little box right here, or if you have one of the keyboard versions, it's always going to be in tune. It's always going to sound the same. It's not going to be affected by the elements. It's going to do exactly what you need it to do. It's just a very, very cool instrument. If you have any questions or comments about this instrument, I would like to discuss Mellotrons and or Chamberlins with you in greater detail. So just leave your thoughts down below in the comments, and I will do the best that I can to answer any questions you have about this. That's it for now for our exploration of original samplers and the Mellotron and the Chamberlin. Please keep creating, keep on pushing out that content, and be kind to each other. And until next time, I'll see you then. Thanks a lot.